the way that the regime has responded to the Trump era, right? It's like this is all about Trump. Again, Trump. This was a man who did not pardon, right, Assange or Snowden or any of these great enemies of the state, right? That's something he could have done without any sort of other political approval. He's someone where if you look at his legacy, there's nothing there that is all that different than what you would expect from a Ted Cruz or a Jeb Bush, even, right, in terms of policy, maybe a little bit on the edges of foreign policy, but there was not even some dramatic reset in foreign policy, right? You didn't see really any cooling of American policies to Russia, right, the great villain. You didn't see any moves against, you had the withdrawal from Afghanistan, but that was followed through by the Biden regime. It wasn't even the Trump years, right? And yet clearly the federal apparatus. So, and I mean, I think a lot of this, it goes back to the 2020 election, right? I think the continuing pursuit of Trump is because of the assault on democracy, calling out the facade, right, of self-governance through all of the chicanery that we saw within the different state changes on the ballot, right? Just simply saying that the federal government really doesn't represent you is something that has, we see it play out with a lot of the motivations on January 6th. We see it with, Mitch McConnell, the art conservative, weakening his own sort of stature within the party that, the base of the party that he gets his power from, right? That there's something that it is more aesthetics and optics that Trump drives these people crazy. And yet here you have, again, an incredible escalation. And I don't think that this is something dismissed for all the other faults of Trump. Again, Trump couldn't even fire Fauci when he was in charge, right? But the substantive weaknesses of that Trump time have fueled the regime making all these missteps. And now you have this very interesting dynamic going on here, right? Where you have the FBI going into Florida, Ron DeSantis' Florida, and catching Florida authorities off guard at that. I'm interested to see the way that tension build up, right, against federal versus state authority there. I think that is something that if based off of DeSantis' record, he knows how to use an issue and really milk it for everything and provide action and not just the press release for it. I'm interested to see the dynamic there. But again, it is. You have half the country now that has had this feeling in their gut for now 2+ years of being enemies of the state. Now they've put even more fuel on that fire, and I don't think they have. There's limits to what the hard power that they can really apply, right? The means the state, right? They've got people with guns. They've got an increasingly growing tax auditing army. Right, there's ways that they can attack you financially, et cetera. But these are all hard power institutions that the state can use to beat down their political enemies, the other party. But there's limits to what that hard power can really do to the spirit, kind of the soul of things. And I don't think they have any. The Uniparty was at its strongest, right, when their number one weapon was the press and not state officials. It was the perception of two parties going at each other when really, at the end of the day, they're on the same page. And again, the actions that they are taking now against a former president, this is not the way that historically America goes about doing things. And again, this is in many ways a very good trend to the extent that it exposes the regime for what it is. But it is something that increasingly looks more and more like South American banana republics. I've got a buddy, JP Ferreira, who talks about like the Brazilianation of America, and we were having coffee earlier today, and he was talking about how if you look at some of the dynamics within Brazil of like their former president Bolsonaro, American politics are very much now resembling Brazilian politics and South American politics, right? Where it's whoever has power is oppressing their political rival. To make sure that they maintain that power. And again, I think there's going to be limits there to how this can play off in the long term. But again, I was expecting that this doesn't surprise me. I've been expecting for a while that I take seriously their hatred for Trump, but it is interesting to see it actually come about. And again, the response just says the Trumpers were always more interesting than Trump himself as a figure. The response of the Trumpers to this is going to be very interesting going forward.